Before we get started, I am very excited to announce the launching of the Disneylander Community Discord. Link to join is right down below. If you've never been a part of a Discord before, it's essentially a chat room, but even cooler. So all of you viewers can go in there and chat. I'll be there chatting. Aurora will be there from time to time chatting, and we can just build up this community. It's gonna be really fun. A little bare bones for now, but we do have a couple different chat rooms for different purposes, as well as a weekly poll that will be getting posted where you can add your own little reaction emoji to vote for your favorite rides, favorite foods. This and that will be coming out with a new poll more or less every week. So jump on into that Discord server, and without further ado, here's the video that you actually clicked on. I love amusement parks. Knott's Berry Farm, Six Flags Magic Mountain, Universal Studios, even the sketchy little fairs that pop up in the grocery store parking lot from time to time. I can't get enough of it. But I've always thought there's something that just sets Disneyland apart. And lately I've really been thinking about why Disneyland rides are so different and so special. In other words, what makes a Disneyland e-ticket attraction a Disneyland e-ticket attraction? After some brainstorming, I've come up with a list of 5 elements of a great Disneyland ride, and I want to share them with you right this very second, in about 4 seconds after the intro's over. Before we get started, keep in mind that I've based a lot of these things off of my favorite rides, being Pirates of the Caribbean, Splash Mountain, Indiana Jones, the Disney greats. But I've also tried to make this list all-inclusive for all of those wonderful Disneyland rides that somehow stand out above other theme parks. So in no particular order, starting here with number 1, which is honestly one of the most important things on this list, is that the rides have a story. You're not just riding a ride for the sake of a ride, but you're part of a story. And now this can go off of an existing story. In the case of a Fantasyland ride, for example, there's a story of a movie, and you are being plopped down into that movie and experiencing that story. It's already a known, beloved story, but instead of watching it on a screen, you get to be inside of it. That's one way that the story can be incorporated. Another is for the ride to take on its own elaborate, detailed story. Indiana Jones being a great example of this. You become part of this world, of this reality, and of this story. You are an active character in the events surrounding you. So you are the hero or participant in this story, and that is something so special on Disneyland rides, where you are thrown into the thick of a story. But it doesn't always need to be that elaborate. In a simpler case, for Space Mountain, for example, the story is that you are on a spaceship, getting into a smaller spaceship and going cruising through the stars. It doesn't need to be complex for there to be some element of a story, a purpose of why you are where you are in the ride. So not only do you enjoy the ride itself as a ride, but you're part of something bigger in a sense. And sometimes the story isn't even explicit. Another example of this being Big Thunder Mountain, where, you know, at the core of it, you're on a mine train and you're on a roller coaster. And that's the story. But there's a whole lot of hidden lore to be dug up inside of that, from ghost trains to ancient native burial grounds and curses. The lore isn't always right in your face, but the story's still there. So there's lots of ways to incorporate it, but story is a big thing that is found so strongly on Disneyland rides. Number 2 is a lot more surface level, but I think it's equally as important. And it's something Disney usually does very well. And that is comfort. How comfortable is the ride? Is the seat you're sitting on comfortable? Is the track smooth enough to be comfortable? Because if it's not, it'll take you right out of the moment, where suddenly you're thinking about being on a ride rather than experiencing the story you're going through. The Matterhorn is an example of this, where it used to be less comfortable than it is today. Believe it or not, the track used to be even more rough, and you used to have to sit in someone's lap. Essentially, it was someone sitting there, someone sitting in your lap, and then you buckle up. The seats were just weird, and it was really a dated design long before they even replaced it. But after replacing it, the ride suddenly becomes a lot more enjoyable. Maybe Matterhorn isn't the best example of comfort because it is still a pretty rough ride, but Disney does comfort very, very well and has a lot of rides that you sit down after standing in line and walking around the parks and you're just there. You don't need to worry about your sore legs anymore or your rattling bones. You can just enjoy the ride. And another piece of comfort that Disney does better than any other park I've ever been to is giving you space to put your bag. If you're carrying a backpack, a purse, souvenirs, whatever it is, you're carrying stuff around Disneyland. Disneyland rides always give you a place to put those at your feet. Where other theme parks make you stow your stuff away in lockers that get all crazy and hectic, Universal Studios, I think, is really guilty of having crazy locker rooms for rides, where Disney just lets you put it right at your feet. Even on California Screamin', the Incredicoaster now, forgive me, you can put your backpack at your feet and go around a loop-de-loop because the ride has been designed to be so comfortable. And this is another thing I think really excels in Disneyland's version of Space Mountain. There's so much comfort. The seats are comfortable, the bar is very comfortable, and there's room for your bag. And it just lets you sit down and enjoy the ride. Number 3 is an excellent example of Disney's finesse and mastery at making a wonderful, wonderful ride, and that is thrill and tension. Now, this is something that other theme parks, roller coaster parks, for example, this is the only thing that they think about. How much does the ride get your adrenaline pumping? How fast is the ride? How much G-force do you experience on the ride? But Disney does this in much more subtle ways. Now, if you're a roller coaster junkie, you might be disappointed at Disneyland, but that does not mean Disneyland rides are short of thrill. Obviously, you have the direct thrills of Guardians and Tower of Terror, Drop Towers, or Incredicoaster being a roller coaster, Space Mountain being a roller coaster, but then thrill can get a little more subtle. Indiana Jones, for example, whipping you around. You're not really on a roller coaster, but you feel like you are on these rough and rugged terrain, turning sharply and dropping suddenly. Indiana Jones is a great example, or even something as small as Roger Rabbit, where you're able to spin your car on a dark ride, just really takes it up to the next level. But the reason I include the word tension along with thrill is because thrill doesn't always have to be a physical experience. It can come in the form of tension as well, which also ties back into story, where there's a threat in the ride. Even a Fantasyland dark ride where you're not whipping around corners or going down quick drops has some degree of thrill to it, just off eerie atmospheres, and tension in the story eases out adrenaline in a similar way to a big drop in a ride. Not necessarily the same, but I kind of think they fit together in the same category because Disney really uses one or both of thrill and tension, mixing story with physical thrills in a way that is just give that ride an e-ticket. I think like every ride at Disneyland is an e-ticket nowadays, or at least most of them are. The fourth element of a great Disneyland attraction is something that I've decided to call depth. Rides are best when you can't experience them all on your first time. If you go on a ride and get off and say, well, that was that, I never need to do that again, the ride has done something wrong. But Disneyland rides have so much depth to them, and this can come in a variety of ways. The most straightforward way is to just have so much stuff to absorb and to look at that you notice something new no matter how many times you've been on the ride. Small World is a superb example of this. There's so much going on that your eyes are just taking in everything they can, but still missing so much. So you go on the ride again and again and again and say, oh, I didn't see that kid before. I didn't see this or that last time I was on the ride, and it makes you want to keep going. Big Thunder Mountain is another great example of this, with just so many little animatronics and details that you whiz by that you want to go again and experience that again. And depth can also come in the form of true randomization, which is something that Disney has been doing more and more of in later years. Star Tours is an example of this, or the Guardians Tower Tavon Collection is an example of this as well, where there's literally randomized elements to the ride. Every time you go on the ride, there's something different than the last time. You might repeat scenes on Star Tours now and then, but there's enough scenes where the order that they go in is always a little different. Indiana Jones, again, is another excellent example of both of these things coming together. With the randomization, the ride, you could go through one of Mara's 3 doors, receive one of Mara's 3 gifts. The bumps in the road are randomized every time, but there's also so much eye candy to look at that every time you go on the ride, there's something different. It keeps you wanting to come back and ride again and again and again. And that is number 4, depth to the ride. I know at the beginning I said these are in no particular order, but this last 5th thing is the most important thing that makes a Disneyland ride a Disneyland ride. The thing that makes the Disneyland ride so special, and that is, you guessed it, a gift shop. No, I'm just kidding. But this is the most important thing that makes a Disneyland ride, and that is immersion. Immersion is the hallmark of the Disney experience as a whole, and this is creating something believable, stepping into a new reality where suddenly everything outside of that reality doesn't matter anymore. And immersion is so important because it does rely on the previous 4 things in this list. Without depth, without comfort, without some sort of tension, and without a story, the immersion can slip away and you can start to daydream or drift off or think about other things. But immersion is so important. And it starts at the gates of Disneyland. Suddenly there's sight lines and you can't see into the outside world. And as you ease into Adventureland or Tomorrowland, the landscape slowly changes. And as you step into the queue of a ride, suddenly you're presented with the story of what you're walking into, and you're just eased into this new reality. And so by the time that you're buckled up on the ride, ready to go, your mind is already there. Disney sets the stage so well that you are immersed from the time you walk into the park, and more immersed up to the point in which you are on a ride. This is something that other parks try to emulate, and I know I'm biased towards Disney, but Universal tries to do this, and Legoland tries to do this, and some other parks try to immerse you in a believable setting. And while they can do it sometimes, nobody can do it like Disney does it. They just create a believable setting. And so once you're on a Disneyland ride, there's nothing else besides that ride. That is it. Amazing examples of this being obviously Indiana Jones, Pirates of the Caribbean, Haunted Mansion, the Guardians Tower. You are in the zone and in the moment. And that is what makes Disneyland, but it is especially prevalent on Disneyland rides. So there you have it, 5 elements of a great Disneyland rides, 5 things that make an e-ticket attraction an e-ticket attraction. And I'll admit this list isn't perfect. Not every amazing Disneyland ride fits into all of these things. Small World, for example, doesn't really have any thrill or tension, but it's still amazing and incredible and Disney. So when it comes down to it, maybe it really is just that Disney magic, that undefinable thing that Disney does so well. I don't know. I love it though. Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Do you have anything to add? Maybe a 6th element of a great Disney ride? And I will see you next time right here on Disneylander. More videos coming your way. Also, make sure to tell me how to end videos because it's been 2 years and this is still the end of every Disneylander. I don't understand why. I am so sorry.